shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Satan's master plan to manipulate the human race is deception. It's always been that way. Prophecies foretell a time just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ when deception will rule the day. It's Satan's method of ruling the world, and it will become worse as we get closer to the coming of the Lord. We will reveal many of Satan's deceptive messages in the end time on today's edition of End of the Age. Well, I do thank you for joining me on today's edition of End of the Age, and we're going to be talking about the truth versus a lie. In our society, it's become crazy that if you want to get an agenda pushed, that it's okay to lie about it. And it's really deceiving, and the Bible warns us about these times just ahead that the world government, many different things, the world religion, global warming, climate change, abortion, socialism, the United Nations, weapons of mass destruction. You remember that? Russian collusion, gun control, and the bought and paid for media or fake news. And the list goes on and on. I could stay here the rest of the afternoon. But it seems like deception seems to rule the day. Now, if you think about it, truth versus a lie. It's the entire basis for the Bible. It's the truth. If you can't know the truth, then what's the point? Everybody just does what they want at that point, right? Because everybody's own truth is, hey, whatever I feel is good, that's what I'm going to do. So think about today's society. It's very important because in going through the times just ahead, you need to be able to decipher from the truth and a deception. Because deception, that's Satan's method of ruling the world. Deception, lies. And God's method of ruling the world is the truth. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So it's important that we understand that in our society, what's being put upon, what's a deception and what's the truth. So think about it in our society. If someone speaks the truth, nowadays, it's almost like they're demonized and considered an extremist or a fundamentalist or a denier, and even some people would consider an individual a murderer. And I'll get to that and explain that here in a minute. So in today's society, a person who believes in the strict literal interpretation of the Bible, going line upon line, precept upon precept, and the adherence to the doctrines thereof, is considered a Christian fundamentalist. They've got these labels that they put on people, or a religious extremist. Well, I'm a Christian fundamentalist, but all I do is I want to believe in the strict literal interpretation of the Word of God. But in a lot of today's society, I'm seen as a bad person because I believe in adhering to the doctrines that are taught in the Word of God. And so it's important that you understand, just because you're labeled as something doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing. They labeled Jesus all kinds of things. In today's society, Jesus would have been considered a religiously exclusive individual or a religious fundamentalist. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing. And in today's society, a person who does not believe, let's say, the man-made global warming climate change hoax, they believe that they don't believe it's destroying the planet. they can be labeled as, and they have been labeled as, a climate denier. Even though global warming, which leads to climate change, is an absolute hoax, they still label these individuals to try to get society to ostracize them. Even though they might be a very, very well-known, credible scientist and have been for decades. You don't want to buy into our agenda? Ostracize you. And in today's society, a person who believes the Second Amendment, which states a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. These people are labeled by some as murderers for not wanting to give up their right to own a gun. And in today's society, a person who believes that, and this is the extreme, but this is where we're headed, a person who believes that Jesus is the only way to heaven is considered intolerant and a religious bigot. Even though John 14:6 states, Jesus saith unto him, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. And so when we get back from the break, I'm going to continue on and I'm going to try to decipher some of the deception in today's society from the truth. So that way we can really know what's going on, because the Bible warns us about deception in the end time.
We live in critical times. If the final 7 years started today, would you know what to do? God's people need to understand the prophecies that are taking place. Daniel 11:33 says, And they that understand among the people shall instruct many. To guide the people around us, we must first receive instruction ourselves on the biblical prophecies of the end time. Endtime Ministries is introducing the Endtime 1000. We have created Jerusalem Prophecy College online to help you be ready to inform those around you. The goal is to have at least 1,000 people prepared to instruct others. By joining the Endtime 1000, you can fulfill Daniel 11:33. Sign up for Jerusalem Prophecy College online and be equipped to guide your friends and loved ones during the final 7 years. Go to JerusalemProphecyCollege.com. That's JerusalemProphecyCollege.com.
So I'm Alan Mounsey and I'm from New Zealand, and I've been following Endtime Ministries for 21 years. I started following Endtime in 1996 when someone handed me an Endtime magazine. Well, the understanding that came from the Endtime magazine led into me being able to watch the original 10 lesson series. And so from there it gave me a clearer understanding of everything that was going on around me, whether it was to do with politics, religion. It made me view the news different, what I was reading, what I was listening to. I was able to reach other people through the Endtime, and I would buy bulk load magazines and then I would hand them out. From there I started turning it into doing seminars, taking Endtime material myself, renting a small room or a hall out and then presenting it to friends, family and other people. Thank you for giving to Endtime Ministries.
With every dollar, you change lives and provide hope for people just like Alan Mounsey. Thank you for giving to Endtime Ministries.
You know, I could go on and on with all of the labels that they're putting on people, and it's all based on deception. The Bible tells us it'll be like that in the end time, but I think you get the picture. Deception is Satan's master plan to set up his kingdom here on the earth. John 8:44 says, Ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. And 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, 8-12 says, And then shall the wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness, there it is, deceit of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not a love for the truth. Deception and truth, total opposites. Because they receive not a love for the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause, God shall send them a strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believe not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. There are people today that are having pleasure in unrighteousness. So, that's Satan's way, deception, lies, doing everything behind the scenes, pushing an agenda, but with deviant means. What is Jesus' way of ruling the world? It's absolute truth. John 3, 20 through 21 says, For everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. But he that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest, that they are wrought in God. John 14, 6 says, Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, I am the truth, and the life. No man comes unto the Father but by me. Jesus Christ was all about the truth, transparency, out in the open. What you see is what you get. John 8:32 says, And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So here's a question. If the truth sets you free, then the opposite is true with a lie. A lie places you in bondage. It's very key in the end time that we know the truth and we follow after the truth, because there's a lot of agendas being pushed now in today's society that are deceptive to pull you away where you should be from the path that you should be on. Matthew chapter 24, at the Olivet Discourse, the disciples asked the Lord on the Mount of Olives, and in verse 3 it says, Matthew 24, 3, And he sat upon the Mount of Olives. The disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? What's going to be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the age, the end of this world, 2,000 years from that time? Jesus answered and said unto them, and watch what happens here. 5 times the Lord warns them of the end time about deception. The first words out of his mouth, Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. The message is going to be deception. Many false prophets shall arise and shall deceive many. That's verse 11. And then in 23 it says I'm in chapter 24, verse 23, Then if any men shall say, Lo unto you, lo, here is Christ, a fake Messiah, or there, don't believe it. For there shall arise false Christ and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive, deception again, the very elect. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, Behold, he's here in the desert, another fake Messiah, go not forth. Because, behold, he's in if they'll say, if he's in the secret chamber, believe it not. It's all deception in the end time, because that's Satan's method. Satan does not have the truth in him. He is the father of all lies. And so his method of getting you where he wants you and pushing his agendas upon you is deception. Revelation 13 tells us this about the end time world government. And I stood up on the sands of the sea, this is John's vision, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. This is a prophecy of the end time world government. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon, Satan, gave this entity, this world government and the Antichrist, Satan gives him his power, his seat, and his great authority. So the world government being established in the earth today will be given its power from Satan himself, and it's going to be all about deception. So think about the world government. Let me go through a few examples in today's society of deception, Satan's effort to deceive you from going away from the truth. Remember, the truth will set you free. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Being under a deception is bondage. So, let's talk about a few examples. Let's talk about the world government. In prophecy, the world government that's going to be established. Or you've heard the term here in the United States, the deep state. In the United States, you've seen ruling bodies, the Brookings Institute, the Federal Reserve, the Council on Foreign Relations. It's like the beach ball that you just can't put your fingertips on. This smoke and mirrors type thing. You've heard about these institutions, but they're behind the scenes really running America. And you don't hear about them in USA Today and all these other, CNN and this, that. You'll never hear about them on there because they don't want to talk about them. They're behind the scenes. It's deception. The truth, if I'm a truth seeker and a truth preacher, everything's out in the open. Here's what I've got, folks. These are entities of deception, but they've been running America for a long time. The Independent ran an article, The Globalists Behind the American Empire by Harold Pease. I thought it was very interesting. I wanted to bring a few excerpts of it from you to let you know the deception that Americans have been under for decades now. You've heard of the deep state recently. Well, the Council on Foreign Relations is part of the deep state. So listen at this. Just a few excerpts. For most of 100 years, no candidate for president obtained office without the Council on Foreign Relations or CFR approval. In time, most Americans came to realize that something was working behind the scenes without their interest as first consideration, and that both major parties reflected this something. So there was no difference really in Republicans or Democrats. They all kind of went, when you got them up there, now the people, there may be a little difference, but the politicians at the top, they all seem to be heading America in the same direction. And initially, no one could put their finger on it. So, generic names like internationalists, world government, the Eastern establishment, New World Order, the world order, they came and went over decades. You've all heard those terms. Each one was replaced when recognized. They started, oh no, there's a New World Order. We got to replace it with something else. Well, when it was recognized as being merely a synonym for the unpopular world government philosophy. Now, this is all very, very real, folks. This is one of the biggest agendas in the world that's being pushed, if not the biggest one. And they all want to keep it under the table because it's Satan's method of ruling the world. This world government derives its power from Satan himself. Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 and 2, you can read it for yourself. And globalism is the favorite term today. Irvin, Baxter, myself, we've talked about it a million times on the radio. Globalism, the process of globalization. But establishment is still used as it came to have a double meaning, a long-term service as well as world government, the establishment. The establishment in the informed sense is the moneyed elite capable of bringing to candidates that they want in office the millions of dollars that are needed to win that office if they can rationalize basically selling their souls to the American empire wanted by these globalists. So the globalists, they're not going to put themselves in those positions, but they will put men who will sell their souls to them and say, I'll just tell me what you want me to say, and they'll put them in those positions. You've heard it referred to recently as the deep state. Their people have infiltrated both political parties, the CFR now, and they own the major media outlets, and which can push gun control, all kinds of stuff. Thus, their influence over presidential candidates for over 100 years is never really covered. They can do what they want, but because they own the media, they're never going to tell you about it. So they've been able to do pretty much what they wanted to, and you never really knew about it. But all candidates know of their influence and power that they have. All presidents, from Herbert Hoover on, have either been members of or had an approving relationship with the Council on Foreign Relations. And it's housed in New York City. So this is the real establishment. When a president is not a member himself, his vice president is. Barack Obama, although supported by the CFR, he wasn't on its published membership list, but Joe Biden was. And since the late 1920s, virtually all of our secretaries of state, United Nations ambassadors, and ambassadors to Russia and China have been members of this same Wall Street special interest group. And CFR members largely filled the majority of presidential cabinets all the way through 2016. No special interest group has had more impact over foreign policy than the Council on Foreign Relations for the last 100 years. And it's led many to question if we only have but one political party in the United States, really with two arms. Now, this is why there has been little difference in foreign policy between Democratic and Republican presidents. There might be little nuances of things here and there, but as a rule, they pretty much headed us in the same direction into a world governing body. They got their advisors from the same Wall Street special interest group, the CFR. And they all supported extensive foreign aid, policing the world with over 800 military bases in other lands, and continual wars. It's been one war right after another without a declaration or a pre-established end. The war just continues on and on. They all supported international trade agreements that enhanced the power of the United Nations over the U.S. Think about NAFTA and all these other agreements, and exported jobs formerly held by Americans. They were trying to redistribute the wealth around the world. They all supported the bank bailouts and their management of the money supply through bankers, the Federal Reserve Bank, which is not federal at all. It's owned by a private club of individuals. And it's never been audited. Think about that. Not once has the Federal Reserve Bank been audited. Why? Because the guys running the show run the Federal Reserve. And they all supported problem solving on the federal or international level rather than the state and county level. Because these are globalists. They've got a global vision, a world global vision, or a world government. And again, the principal organization of the moneyed establishment is the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations. It's deeply embedded in both political parties, and it owns the major media outlets. That's very, very important that you understand that. You want to know why? Now remember, Satan's propping all this up. The Bible tells us this, Revelation chapter 13, verse 2. Satan gives this entity its seat, power, and its great authority. So Satan is propping this up. What's Satan's method of ruling the world in the end time? World government and deception. Satan can't tell the truth. So everything he does is based on a lie. If the CFR, if everything they were doing was above board, then it wouldn't be all shadowy. You'd know they'd be audited. You'd know what they were doing, but you don't know anything about it because they bought and paid for the major media outlets, and they deny coverage to the competing political parties and elevate their quote unquote sympathetic candidates through the nominating process of each party. So they'll give you two of their guys and say, okay, America, choose. You've got the right to vote. Absolutely. You can come into the polls and vote. Here's both of our guys. And either one you vote for, you think, man, I'm getting the same thing the other guy ran on. It's because they've been controlled. You wonder why they hate Donald Trump so much? Because he's not a member of all this stuff. Americans then got to choose which CFR-approved candidate they prefer. You go to vote. You think, well, hey, I'm voting for a Republican. I've got it made. Now he pretty much does what the other guy was going to do. Same way with a Democrat. They're all were leading us down the road towards a world government until the current administration. You wonder why the deep state is screaming so much? That's why. And you know, it may be the greatest secretive show in America. We call it a free election, but the options are being managed by a group of individuals. For 100 years, no candidate for president obtained office without the approval of the Council on Foreign Relations. And for the moment, its power seems to be permanent. And I say for the moment, because we know the Bible says that we're not going to be under the reign of a world government. Something has to happen that'll pull us out of this mess. We believe, according to Scripture, our current government, the establishment, the deep state, the CFR, the Federal Reserve, the Brookings Institute, is all built on deception by globalists who believe in a world government. And in the end times, we need to know the truth about these organizations. Think about it. In talking about world government, what's going on? David Rockefeller, who donated the land that the United Nations sits on in New York, which the United Nations is the seat of world government, David Rockefeller for many years was president of the Council on Foreign Relations. He also was the chairman of the board at Chase Manhattan Bank, now known as the J.P. Morgan Bank. Now, I don't know whether he's still chairman or not. Obviously, he's passed away. But I don't know if there's how the Rockefellers are still involved in the Chase Bank. But I promise you that they are majority stockholders, those individuals, these globalists. But he made a statement in his memoirs in 2002. And listen to what he said. David Rockefeller, in his memoirs on page 405, he said, "For more than a century, ideological extremists at either end of the political spectrum have seized upon well-publicized incidents, such as my encounter with Castro, to attack the Rockefeller family for the inordinate influence they claim we wield over American political and economical institutions. Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interest of the United States, characterizing my family." I tell you what, I'll finish the quote when we get back, because you've got to hear the end of this quote. And it's from David Rockefeller, who was a liberal internationalist. He was a globalist. He believed in a one-world government. He was the president of the Council on Foreign Relations at one point, which is this secretive cabal really running America.
Israel, there is no other place like it on the face of the earth. Over 4,000 years ago, God gave this land to Abraham and his seed and said that he would put his name in Jerusalem. The world watches as this tiny nation stands in spite of all the obstacles. Irvin and Judy, along with the Endtime team, would like to invite you to travel with us to the Holy Land. This trip will be a wonderful and life-changing experience. Our Spring Endtime Prophecy Tour will have the privilege of being the first Endtime tour to visit Jerusalem as the recognized capital of Israel. Some of the highlights will be the Mount of Olives, the Temple Mount, the Tomb of Jesus, the boat ride on the Sea of Galilee, the baptisms in the Jordan River, and we will also visit Petra in Jordan. If you would like to experience the Bible in full color, join us April 26th through May 11th, 2018. Call 1-800-ENDTIME, that's 1-800-363-8463, and press 2, or go to endtime.com/Israel Tour to receive your information today.
Do you believe we're living in the end times? If so, what's the one magazine you should subscribe to? Endtime is the magazine designed to guide you through the end times. Irvin highly recommends Endtime magazine so you can stay informed with what's going on in the news and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Call 1-800-363-8463 and get Endtime magazine for 2 years for only $29. Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com to take advantage of this special offer.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archives button.
So, David Rockefeller said that many have characterized my family and me as internationalists, or those that believe in a world government, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, a one world, if you will. Now, this is what he said. He said, if that's the charge, I stand guilty and am proud of it. That's David Rockefeller, who was the president of the Council on Foreign Relations. Now, these are the kinds of minds, the ideologies that's behind our government right now. Council on Foreign Relations, that controls the political side. They're putting in the political figures. Some of them, you never know their name. And the Brookings Institute controls the ideology. It's a think tank for these globalists. Strobe Talbot was the president of it for many years. And then the Federal Reserve, which is run by just a closed group of bankers. And they control the finances. They control whether the interest rates go up or down. They control the economy. And they have nothing to do with the government. They're no more federal than Federal Express. It's a private group of individuals. So these are, and the Trilateral Commission, it's one of the brothers to these institutions. And so these are the ones that run the world. These are what's considered the establishment. And it's all deception in the end time. World government, deception. It's propped up by Satan. So you need to know the truth about really what's going on. I'm talking about lies in the end time versus the absolute truth. Remember, that you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. But a lie will put you in bondage. Okay? So, another example of, in the end time, a complete, total lie, a hoax. Global warming, climate change. The Federalist recently posted an article that the title was, How Successful Climate Pressure. You realize how they've been really successful. Al Gore and all the rest of them have been very successful in pushing this in colleges and schools, every which way. How successful climate pressure tactics have paved the way for the gun control bullying. If you want to get something done, you bully people into it. Now think about it. This is Satan's method of running the world in the end time, because all of this goes back to world government. Climate change, gun control, it all goes back to the United Nations and their efforts to rule the world. You say, no, this whole gun control thing started in the Parkland school shooting, or this school down in Florida. No, that's not where this started. There are huge agendas behind all of this. You wonder how these students got this march off the ground just in a couple weeks that cost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And these guys are on every news station and everything. They are using these children to push the gun control lobby. How did that get organized so fast? Because there's a huge agenda already in America for gun control. Let's talk about it. How did the climate change tactics pave the way for the gun control bullying? It's all lies and deceptions in the end time. The gun control lobby is borrowing the playbook from one of the most effective propaganda campaigns in history. Human-induced global warming. From engaging celebrity activists to bullying private industry to portraying opponents as murderers, they're saying that an individual that wants to carry a gun now, they could actually be considered a murderer since they don't want to give up their guns to try to keep from these school shootings from happening, which that's the last thing that would happen. The well-funded and highly orchestrated gun control lobby is copying the same approach that has been successfully deployed by the international climate change movement that sell the dubious claim that humans are causing global warming, which is a complete hoax. I'm not going to take time to prove that today. I think you've heard about it many times in the End of the Age program. It's a complete hoax, everybody. Global warming leads to climate change. I mean, I don't have time to go down that road, but just trust me, it's a hoax. So let's talk about one aspect of this, which is the indoctrination and the exploitation of children. Textbooks are filled with bogus scientific studies about global warming and dire warnings about its consequences. School, because you got to get to the children now, because people my age and above, we're not going to pay any attention to it because it's a lie. But if you can get to the moldable minds of a 10, 12, 15-year-old, then when they get out of high school, man, you've got a warrior on your hands at that point. So schools commemorate the environmental holidays like Earth Day so they can push the climate dogma. Teachers are encouraged to tag climate change in every subject area from science to health and history. And whoever disagrees or even mildly objects is portrayed as a child-hating monster, and they're totally ostracized in society, even though it's based on a lie. So you got to know what the truth is. If you're just sitting down watching your nightly news and basing your global view and opinions and even your national view and your county view on that, man, we need to talk, because you're going to have a very tainted view of what's really going on in the world. Because remember, the media outlets, these huge major media outlets, they're all bought and paid for, everybody. And after all, who wants to, getting back to the climate change, who wants to deny a safe future for our kids? Well, it's not cramming the global warming climate change down their throat. Climate crusaders are even using children as litigants in lawsuits to sue the federal government for violating the youngest generation's constitutional rights to life, liberty, and property, as well as failing to protect essential public trust resources. Gun control activists, they're seizing on this strategy. They've seen it works. They're shamefully capitalizing off the shooting of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School last month. Look what's going on. They've turned the teens into these victims into celebrities. And they're peddling these kids to news outlets, I should say, as if they were candidates for a public office or something. Just like the climate change cabal, the powerful gun control interest, they're going to hide behind the facade of children to promote their policy agenda. And despite early assurances that the Parkland students, the uprising was purely organic, well, now we know that it wasn't. There were deep-pocketed power brokers, including the former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, former Democratic National Committee Chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz was involved, and the country's largest teachers union. They began funding and coordinating the campaign just hours after the massacre ended. And last week, millions of school children, with the approval of their parents and educators, they defied normal rules and they walked out of class in an act of really fealty to the gun control lobby. And the walkout was strongly supported by the National Education Association. And since the horrific shootings in Parkland, Florida, the students across the country, they've launched and inspired that movement to demand long overdue action on school safety and gun control. The Education Association and its affiliates and members throughout Florida and the nation, they support these calls to prevent further school massacres. I want to prevent further school massacres, but taking the Second Amendment away and attacking the NRA, that's not going to solve one thing. Because these deranged individuals that want to go into these schools and do these things, they're not paying attention to any laws anyway. And so you got to think rationally on this stuff. What's deception and what's the truth? Because deception, we've been warned about it many times in Scripture. It's going to be the prevalent ideology of people, of the globalist in the end time. Deception. Let's deceive the people into getting them to do what we want them to do. I don't want you to do that. I want you to know the truth. So the pile-on continued this past Saturday. You remember when all those people marched in Washington, D.C. and around the country to participate in the March for Our Lives, which was the latest protest purportedly organized by the kids. And if you've ever been in on one of those huge the marches around the country, I mean, you can't imagine the amount of money and time and resources and people that go into that. That was not organized by a few select kids from the Marjory High School. No. And so to demand that the adults enact this strict gun control laws, the March for Our Lives, they said, is created by and inspired by and led by students across the country who will no longer risk their lives waiting for someone else to take actions to stop the epidemic of mass school shootings that has become all too familiar. School safety is not a political issue. The mission and, this is what they say, the mission and focus of the March for Our Lives is to demand that a comprehensive and effective bill be immediately brought before Congress to address these gun issues. It's not a gun issue, number one. Has nothing to do with a gun. They keep calling an AR-15 an assault rifle. It's not an assault rifle. And I'm not going to get off into that. I'm just saying you got to know the deception from the truth. AR does not mean assault rifle. It's Armalite. It's a type of gun. It's a semi-automatic weapon. I've had a semi-automatic .22 rifle from the time I was about 7 or 8 years old. It shoots a .22 caliber pistol, or a .22 caliber round. An AR-15 shoots a .223, 5.56. It's the truth versus a lie, folks. Don't be sold stuff on the media that's not true. And it gets into all kinds of issues. Mark Morano, the head of the Climate Depot, it's a website devoted to exposing the climate cabal's phony science and their shady tactics. He writes about how children are weaponized by adult activists in his latest book, The Political Incorrect Guide to Climate Change. And if you can't convince adults who are willing and pliable audience, then get to the children. Kids from kindergarten through college are prime targets for the climate change fear promoters' propaganda. Politicians, academia, Hollywood, and global warming activists have focused on kids, feeding them the steady diet of fear and doom, using vulnerable children to promote climate fears. The media amplifies these tactics. Does it sound familiar? Since September 14th, the gun control lobby has closely emulated the winning game, their game plan of the climate change movement. And here's a few examples. They're recruiting A-list celebrities. Several Hollywood titans supported the March for Our Lives. George Clooney and his wife, Amal, contributed $500,000. And it was matched by Oprah Winfrey, $500,000. Other benefactors included Steven Spielberg and his wife, producer Jeffrey Katzenberg, and celebrities such as Reese Witherspoon, Kim Kardashian, Justin Bieber, Jessica Alba. They're busy one-upping each other on the social media with posts and tweets demanding gun control legislation, and then threatening corporations, the climate mob. They've long targeted fossil fuel companies for their alleged role in causing global warming. Then they're filing nuisance lawsuits to inflict debilitating financial damage. And a hearing in the nation's first climate science lawsuit was held March 21st in San Francisco, and the defendants are being blamed for raising sea levels. So since gun makers don't have the same deep pockets, the gun control lobby has had to take a different route. And they've went through all kinds of different avenues, coercing companies to ban sales of guns. Lots of different things.
To God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at Endtime will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Order this brand new book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
Turn your scriptures from black and white into color. Experience the footsteps of Jesus. Understand Bible prophecy that is coming to pass right now. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter and the Endtime team this spring 2018 for a life-changing trip to Israel and Jordan. Mark your calendar for April 26th through May 11th for this amazing journey. Call 1-800-ENDTIME, that's 1-800-363-8463 and press 2, or go to endtime.com/Israel-tour to receive your information today.
You know, I know we talk about a lot of different subjects here on End of the Age. The program used to be called Politics and Religion, and now we've changed it to End of the Age, but I still have to get off to politics every once in a while, and of course we get on to religion. So there's all kinds of topics and things that will happen in the end time. And we want to help you guys navigate through this stuff, because if you, like I say, if you're just sitting in your lazy boy at night letting the news media feed you, you're going to have a very, you're not going to have a good good view on what's really going on, especially through the times just ahead. Listen at how crazy this gets. The LifeSite News reports that Democrats say that in a recent poll, hunting is wrong, but abortion is okay. And this is a huge thing in our society going forward, that people have almost accepted, because of the news media, that abortion is okay. Now think about this. So according to a recent Economist/YouGov poll, the overwhelming majority of Democrats think it's morally wrong to hunt for sport, but at the same time, only 38% of them, now this is according to the poll, this is not Dave Robbins, only 38% of them think abortion is morally wrong. BuzzFeed reports that a spokesperson for Planned Parenthood, which has not been directly in touch with the students that had this march, said it's been contacted and offered support to Giffords, which was spearheading the National Coalition for the Groups working with that March for Our Lives that happened on Saturday. So you see what's going on here, and there are people that are all against guns, which have killed, I don't know how many thousands. I don't know the statistics. I haven't got that far off into it. But maybe 500 or 600 students a year, which is it's horrible. It's terrible. And there are people that are demonizing the NRA and law-abiding gun owners, but yet Planned Parenthood, who was wanting to be involved in this March for Our Lives situation, they will abort 350,000 to 400,000 babies every year, and they're all about trying to stop this killing of 500 to 600, 700 children a year, but they'll kill 350 to 400,000. Do you see what's going on in our society? It's twisted. I don't want any children to be killed. I want them to stop. But do you see the difference in like an agenda that's being pushed here? It's all about an agenda, not the truth. 2 Timothy 3:1-3 says, "This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come." And then in verse 3 it says, there will be people that are without natural affection. Perilous times, meaning hard to bear, troublesome, dangerous, harsh, fierce, savage, people without natural affection. Being able to kill a child, that should never become a normal situation in our society, but the media would like to portray it as that. So I'm talking about truth versus a lie. I always go back to Scripture. Got Questions gave a great answer to, is abortion murder? Because there are people that think, no, it's okay, even partial birth abortion, which my finite mind can't even go there, that people would say that that's okay to do that. But there are people who can go there in their mind. And the media would say, a lot of the major media, really that's bought and paid for, remember, by these people that have an agenda, they would tell you that it's okay. They support abortion. So I want to talk about abortion with the time I have left. I might get into a couple more topics. I could go on for days on the deception in the end time. But my goal today is to get you to study and research and make sure you know. Listen to our program, read our magazine, and there are other good programs that can help you weed through all the mess to get to the truth, because that's what you're going to have to follow in the end time. So the subject of abortion, perhaps one of the most highly charged issues of our day, one of the most, and finding an honest answer to the question, is abortion murder? Because the news media is saying that it's not. It's a woman's right to choose, and I got all that, but I don't understand that, because you're talking about a life here. You're not talking about, at conception, it's a child, okay? Is abortion murder? It takes courage for those who have performed abortions or have had abortions themselves to come out with that. And so, and to tell, hey, I did this, I'm sorry, this, that, and the other. But for the media to push that agenda and to say it's okay, no. not acceptable. The Bible's clear about the fact that murder is wrong. Exodus 20:13. And the Bible condemns murder repeatedly as a characteristic of a wicked society. Deuteronomy 5:17, Isaiah 1:21, Hosea 4:2, Matthew 5:21. You can write these scriptures down. I'm not going to have time to read them. Determining whether or not abortion is murder involves two considerations. First, whether or not a fetus is in the uterus is actually a human being. And second, if a fetus is a child, whether or not abortion can be rightly called murder since it is legal in most countries. If murder is unlawful killing, it would follow that a lawful killing would not be murder. However, one reason murder is outlawed is that it's an unethical for one person to unilaterally decide the fate of another one. I mean, come on. Under the Old Testament law, a murderer was not put to death unless there were multiple witnesses. No person shall be put to death on the testimony of one witness. It's Numbers 35:30. Abortion is killing based on a mother's unilateral judgment and choice, which defines it as murder. The deception argument is, and here it is, deception again, is that if a fetus is not yet human, if the fetus is just a mass of impersonal tissue, ending its life would not be considered murder. So is a fetus a human, or is it something else? Well, biologically speaking, human life begins at conception, period. When the mother's egg reaches the father's sperm, they come together, they combine and create a new string of DNA that's personalized and it's totally unique. DNA is coded information and the blueprint for a new human's growth and development. No more genetic material needs to be added. The zygote in the womb is as human as the mother in whose womb it dwells. When a mother aborts the process of fetal development, she's destroying a unique life. The Bible clearly points to conception as the beginning of a human life. Samson said, I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. That's Judges 16:17. He refers to his unborn self as having already been what God planned him to be, a Nazarite. David says, you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. That's Psalms 139:13. So again, we see David referring to himself as a person in the womb, and then he says, your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. That's Psalms 139:16. David is saying that God had all of his days planned out for him while he was still in the womb. Now, again, this evidence points to the personhood beginning at conception rather than at the moment of birth. And we see God had a similar plan for the life of the preborn Jeremiah, if you remember his story. He said, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. That's Jeremiah 1:5. The Bible considers a fetus to be an unborn child, a planned human being that God is forming from the moment of conception. And this being the case, it doesn't really matter that human jurisprudence says or how socially or politically acceptable abortion is. God's law takes precedence over all of that. A mother who decides to abort her child is unilaterally making a decision to end another person's life, and that is, and always has been, the definition of murder. Now, also, in talking about, and you can see so much deception in society. You see what I'm saying? That we're warned many times about the deceptive ways in the end time. The world government, the world religious system, issues like abortion, gun control, climate change. I mean, there's just a plethora. I could go on and on. The world religious system. Biblical doctrines in the end time are going to be seen as divisive. We see it in the news right now. The Declaration Towards a Global Ethic. It was signed in the Parliament of World Religions meeting in September of 1993 in Chicago. They stated in there that we affirm that a common set of core values is found in the teachings of the religions and that these form the basis of a global ethic. It's a world religious system being established to create a world government. That's the whole goal behind that. You can see so much deception right now going on in society. There are people that believe the doctrines of the Bible are divisive, that they've separated Christian communities and Christian organizations for years, and we need to just push those aside. Everybody love each other, get along. And if you don't want to comply with this interfaith movement, the Parliament of World Religions, and these huge global religious movements that are coming together, you will be considered a religious bigot, religiously extremist, or religious exclusive, just for wanting to adhere to the doctrines of the Bible that are considered divisive. This ethic goes on to say that there already exist ancient guidelines for human behavior which are found in the teachings of the religions of the world and which are the condition for a sustainable world order. It's all about a world government, folks. That's where all of this is headed back towards. It also says, opening our hearts to one another, we must sink our narrow differences for the cause of the world community, of the world government, practicing a culture of solidarity and relatedness. So what they're saying is that we want a world government. We brought together this Parliament of World Religions to get everybody's ideology on the same track to prop up this world governing body. And so we want you all to get along. In order to do that, let's sink our narrow differences. Well, sitting there at the Parliament of World Religions, they have Wiccans, warlocks, Satan worshipers. They have people who believe in thousands of gods. People who believe in Wiccans or witches, I should say. People that worship thousands of gods. People that worship rocks, the sun, the moon, the stars, pagans. I mean, people that worship all kinds of stuff. They're saying, they tell everybody there in the global ethic that was written by Hans Küng, let's just sink our narrow differences and everybody get on the same wavelength, this same ideology, and let's move towards this world governing body. They say it, a sustainable world order. So there is a spirit behind all of this deception in the end time. What is that spirit? It's Satan himself. Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 and 2 talks about a world government, and it says that the dragon give this entity its seat, its power, and great authority. In the end time, make sure that you can weed through all the lies and know the truth, because you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
End of the Age is a production of Endtime Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. Endtime Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.